Our expert panel this evening, Craig Godfrey from Godfrey Weisberg, CPAs and Advisors, Mary Stucco, Farm Bureau Insurance, Scott Farragon from Cartridge World, and George Volman from Volman Ford. And we are very pleased to have a special guest, which we do from time to time, David Bodkin, my old friend. First time we met was in Japan. In fact, he was head of international public relations for Delphi, a lifetime General Motors public relations executive in Japan, Switzerland, and the U.S., and maybe other places too. We'll let you fill us in on that, talking about corporate PR, travel, communications, and the like. Welcome to our studio here.
Hey, Michael Patrick, great to see you, mate.
Did I get your CV in decent order there?
Yeah, pretty close. To sum up a large part of the career, I spent 10 years outside the U.S. with my family. We were with GM Europe in Zurich, and then we were with GM Asia Pacific in Japan, Tokyo, and Hong Kong.
A public relations practitioner at that level for a giant corporation like that, you know, we're here talking with people who run small businesses, and maybe they're a little more nimble, maybe they have to move a little quicker. I would imagine that an entity like General Motors in a position like you were in moved like an elephant. Did it or didn't it?
Yeah, it's a larger organization, many more people to deal with, many larger audiences with which to reach out and touch. So yeah, at times I would say it was not as nimble as you could find in smaller organizations.
What was your secret? Did you have sort of tenets of public relations that maybe can relate to small businesses in terms of just personal communications and making contacts, things like that?
Well, at times you have to convince people that they need public relations. Okay?
Anyway.
So that's the first thing you do. And one method I've used to do that without referring to a book or whatever is a little anecdote. All these are rhetorical questions, by the way.
Okay.
But 2 years ago, I assumed you all voted in the national elections, and you probably voted for McCain or you voted for Obama. Okay, I'm not asking anybody to tell me for whom they voted.
Yeah.
Did you meet President Obama? Did you get to sit down with Senator McCain? Chances are you probably did not. Well, then how did you know what they were thinking? Well, you picked up a newspaper, you listened to the radio, you watched a spot on TV, then you probably went to the chocolate and coffee shop and talked to your friends who read a newspaper, listened to the radio, watched TV. And that's how you formed your opinions without ever meeting these people and bought their product. Okay? So the same is true for smaller organizations. Here, I would not limit myself just to the Lansing area. I mean, I know you have TVs here and print and obviously radio, but I would reach out to the Grand Rapids and Detroits and let more and more people know what you are doing. And I heard that the group is small right now, but you might find some people in Grand Rapids or other cities in the state that have excellent ideas as well, and at some point you need to share that. But to get that word out, you need either advertising, which is very costly, or you rely on PR. And PR, let me also underscore, so you go deal with a television station or a radio station. It just might be the background, the journalist, the anchor, with no story intended. Let them know what you're about. I'll get back to you. Follow up, and follow up some more.
Just to get on the radar screen.
Yeah. I would not necessarily call up a journalist or a radio host just because I have a story. At some point, you need to set the groundwork. And then, over time, you develop your own stories. And in fact, I've got to be honest, some of the best ideas I ever had actually came from journalists
Oh, really?
who wanted to investigate certain stories.
So it really kind of comes back to relationship building with these people then.
Absolutely. And have a very sincere understanding, though. Relationship building is important, but that doesn't guarantee always a positive story. What you're looking for out of the story is accuracy. Primo has to be accuracy. You hope it's a positive story for you. Okay. I'd like to think you're presenting a positive story. But don't confuse the relationship with the fact that that person has a job to do and they're going to report the news.
Okay. Now, you had to make these personal relationships all across the world, from places like Switzerland and Japan. You were on the airplane a lot, I'm guessing. And this was, pardon me, but before the internet era in some parts of your career. How did you maintain contact? I mean, we have people here who are going to try to build a network here, or they are building a network, maybe not just with journalists, but with other people in business. it requires obviously more than just an email, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would say as time went on and technology got better, my travel went down. You didn't need as much face-to-face. You still wanted face-to-face time, but in truth, you didn't need as much. And the internet has just been fabulous.
Is it good or bad, though? I mean, we have people who text each other from across the room sometimes rather than personally talking.
Well,
I mean,
just
it's
talking
true.
about using it. I'm just talking about using it from a business sense. I'm not going to get into the Twitters and all that. Sorry.
No Kwame here. But really, I mean, what's wrong with inviting someone to lunch or getting a couple of people together, even if you have no business to talk about, just to keep maintaining that contact?
Absolutely, that makes sense.
Did you use much of the GoToMeeting or some of the computer, whether it's Skype, where you could see who you're talking to and then not travel and just
Video conference calls, things
video
like that?
conference, yeah.
Toward the end of my career, the answer would be no. I think some of the youth on the staff were doing that.
Okay.
But there was really no reason for me to be doing it. I won't bore you with the details of what my job was toward the end of my career. And so if you really go back to the nuts and bolts of my career, Skype didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was nice to have a computer and all that, but a lot of the technology I heard some of you talking about earlier today wasn't around, in the 80s or the 90s.
And what MPS had alluded to there is people texting each other from across the room. As I understand it, young people now, that's their only method of communication. That's their relationship now. It's not the face-to-face. And so when you travel around the world to have meetings and whatnot, these younger people are going to probably just text or email and maybe not video conference. What do you think?
I still think it's important to, at some point, get face-to-face time.
I would agree with you, exactly.
That the technology allows me, following that, to text back and forth. Good. I've already understood. I've got a value set up with that relationship. At least I've got that, and now I'll text and do whatever.
With all your experience in business, what would you find to be the most pivotal, the most important things to remember in communication with businesses or other companies?
One, reach out. Two, stay in touch. And quite frankly, be accurate and honest.
I got a quick question. In public relations, as you develop it, every now and then crises will come and you have to deal with it. And especially with General Motors being so large, what was the one crisis that you had to handle that you had a positive outcome from? Can you give us a story?
Whoa.
Start with the letter A. Start with A and we'll get to Z.
I got to be honest with you. I'm going to leave General Motors alone and not get into that. I think I was fortunate enough to, again, have this international experience. Did have a chance to reach out to a large number of automotive journalists. In truth, I don't recall a grand crisis. I did recall a lot of work, a lot of reach, and quite frankly, a lot of time away from home. But
Let me ask you this. You worked with top-level executives at General Motors and at Delphi Corporation. The people in this room and in the coffee house next door are from time to time going to be called upon to speak at their Rotary Club or speak at the Chamber of Commerce or be on the radio and television with us here. How did you prepare those high-level executives for presentations when maybe they weren't necessarily known as great presenters? Are there secrets, ways that you calm them down or coach them?
Well, there are pros in the business that can coach them, and then some of us professionals coach them as well. That's a process. You're not going to sit down in an hour. If you've allowed that we have a person who isn't used to public speaking, you're not going to solve that problem in an hour. There are techniques to do it. And then, quite frankly, depending on the forum, you did kind of pick and choose executives. I mean, the ones that weren't great speakers, maybe you put them into smaller groups. I mean, I've known a number of execs that in smaller groups, they're fabulous. But within larger groups, the 500s, 600s or something, they can't get past the rostrum, so to speak.
Yeah.
They can't project for some reason. But going back to, we were talking about these interviews, that requires prep work. I mean, you have to show up having practiced at home, at the kitchen table somewhere. These are the 3 or 4 points I need to get across. And I underscore that. Your list might have 15 or 50 points. No. Pick out your top 3 If you get a chance to go to your fourth, that's terrific. But just make sure you get your top 3 messages out. And then for all of you that do speak to the, shall we say, the smaller groups, it's practice, practice, practice. I mean, even if you've gone through these lessons from some professional, I would still expect if you're going out to give a half-hour presentation that you've practiced that 6 or 7 times in front of a mirror or in front of a friend who will accurately assess your capabilities. But there is a lot of practice, and going back to the interviews, there is a lot of preparation.
Anybody here get nervous when they have to speak?
I think everybody does. Isn't that
I
the
do.
number one fear?
Yeah,
is
public speaking.
It is
Preparation.
most, yes. And the smaller groups, like different networking groups where you have to go up and make a 10 or 15-minute presentation, it does get easier with time. And I think with the smaller groups, maybe you feel a connection to some of the people in the group, so it's easier to speak than I would assume than speaking to, say, a 500 or 600 person group. I've never spoke to anybody.
Yeah,
that.
I would concur with you. The smaller groups I love. One, because instead of a text, I prefer to go off of just notes.
Yes, you can
Okay,
highlight
it's
a
easier to
general
do that.
outline.
Quite frankly, I get to use my hands a little bit more if I'm in a smaller group. And above all, you get to see the eyes and the reaction to what you're saying. So if you're trying to make a point and you're getting dead eyes out there, you have the opportunity to see that.
The
and
group
to
is more
change-
engaged.
Right,
and
right.
Yes.
Or you see the smiles when you try and, do a little joke or something like that. But I totally agree with you that that's the way I do it now. I've learned to just make notes and then talk freely, basically freestyle from those notes.
Yeah, one small point, too, and you just hit on it. If you can tell a joke, tell a joke. But if you honestly can't, don't.
Rock solid advice this evening on the Mid-Michigan Business Wrap. SpotlightMM.com is where you can find us to reconnect. Or stay tuned. We'll be back in 4 minutes. It's Michael Patrick Shields, back in a flash.